Hi folks, Training Tip Thursday. And the last few weeks we talked about some of Dave Walter's tips. Those were to get high, go deep, be cross, take off. And his fifth and final tip is to, get my paper up, think negative. Now that's not like thinking negative like I suck, this race is going to be awful, it's too hot. It's thinking negative. He's referring to trying to run negative splits in a race. In fact, he made the comment that he's run negative splits in every race that he's done, with the exception of Boston. Now the thing he didn't mention about Boston, and I'm sure that Dave knows this, is chances are he's never really going to have a negative split in Boston. And the reason being that Boston is downhill at the beginning and a lot of uphill at the end. So it's very unlikely that anybody's ever going to run a negative split unless they really try and do something weird. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't use the same principles of what's going on with the negative split. So let's talk about negative splits a little bit. First of all, I think that people think that there's this huge difference when you run a negative split, that you're going to be dramatically faster the second half of the race. And in general, that's not true. So I took a look at some of my own races. I took a look at my marathon PR, my half marathon PR, and my 5K PR. And I had to do a little bit of math because it's not like they have timing mats out there to get you exactly in the middle. But to kind of guesstimate for the first half of the race, where was I? And in the second half of the race, where was I? And it broke down like this. For my full marathon, I was only a minute faster the second half of the race. I was about 4 seconds per mile faster. Now, most of that is in the tail end of the marathon. In other words, for that second 13 miles, probably the first 10 of those are about the same as the last 3 where you pick it up a little bit. But in my case, I was only about a minute faster. For my half marathon PR, I was only 33 seconds faster on the back end, or about 5 seconds per mile. Again, that was all coming in the final few miles. 5K is a little bit different. It's a relatively short race. In this case, there was a difference of 27 seconds, 17 seconds per mile, but that can be a little bit misleading. On the other hand, I did a really, really good 5K, and I was just flying the last mile. So there's some adrenaline involved there. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them are going to be exactly like this. Certainly, there are times when people will have a little bit larger gap. But usually, the difference is relatively modest, because what you do is you start your race just a little bit slower, you settle into the pace then for the bulk of your race, and then you try and finish it a little bit faster. So why do we recommend this, and why does this work for most people? It's about running economy. So we've mentioned running economy before. When you think running economy, think fuel economy. Everybody really understands fuel economy in a car. Your body's the same thing, except instead of gas, we're talking about your use of oxygen in your fuel. Your running economy is very important. The better your running economy, the better you're going to be able to do in your races, long runs, etc. Even when we do warm-ups before our race and all the dynamic drills and all the things I always harp on people to do, there's a tendency very early in the race to still not get the very best running economy. Why is that? Well, even though we say don't weave, sometimes there's weaving going on, which is surging and going back and forth. We're usually kind of nervous about the race and excited, and we tend to run a little bit more tense, and our body is not fully warmed up yet. So part of the idea behind starting just a little bit slower is to help us run a little bit more relaxed, get our body really warmed up so as we settle into race pace, we can get the highest possible running economy. So when you're doing your next race, go ahead and think negative, but think negative split.